Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast, where we introduce you to a world of small to medium business acquisitions and mergers. We interview business owners, industry leaders, authors, mentors, and other influencers with the sole intent to share with you what it looks like to buy or sell a business. Let's get rolling. Hello, and welcome to the How to Exit podcast. Today, I'm here with Jeremy Harbour. Jeremy is a mergers and acquisitions expert, a mentor, an author, and still doing deals as we speak today. And actually, in full disclosure, he's one of my mentors. He's one of the only full courses I've taken, and I'm really active inside of his community. He built a beautiful community inside of the mergers and acquisition space. I want to welcome you and thank you for being on the show, Jeremy.
No, thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. Let's just start off with the same place we start everybody else out, and that is, what is your origin story? How did you get into buying and selling businesses? What got you started?
Yeah, well, look, I'm an entrepreneur through and through. I was the annoying kid at school that was always trying to sell people stuff. I was the son of a farmer. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the south of England, and I could work on my dad's farm for £1 an hour. Let's say $1 an hour for your audience. And so, of course, my imagination was constantly, how the hell do I make more than a buck an hour? And so I'd constantly be coming up with these schemes and ideas for generating more money. And I mean, I had a weekend market stall where I was selling watches and jewelry and a whole bunch of stuff. Anyway, I left school when I was 15. I didn't finish high school, and I pursued that business. It was actually generating quite a bit of cash at the time for a 15-year-old. And but that went spectacularly bust when I was 19 years old. I really overstretched myself. I took on a new premises, lots of staff, and I suddenly had this baptism of fire that not everything I touched turned to gold. In fact, in the little chat we were having just before this conversation, I was saying to you, the day I started in business was the day I felt I knew the most about business. You have this kind of arrogance about how easy everything is going to be until the fucking rubber hits the road, and then you realize where all all the obstacles are and how difficult it really is. But anyway, went bust when I was 19, and at that time it was the early 19 or mid 1990s, and I got into telecommunications. So mobile phones were miniaturizing, telecoms. Every man and his dog had a telecommunications company, and it was really kind of booming. And I guess I rode the crest of that wave and started my own company. That grew quite quickly, as I think pretty much anybody that dabbled in that space at that time did. And then what was really interesting is, I was always a student of business. I read every book, went to every seminar, listened to cassettes because that was what you did back then. There was no internet. So, I was really immersing myself in my own business education and talking to anybody that was vaguely successful about business. And what was completely clear to me then was that there were only three things you could really do to influence the performance of your business. And that was sales, marketing, and your team. And everything was kind of built around those three levers that you could play around with to improve your business. Now, when the telecoms industry started to massively consolidate in the later 1990s and early 2000s, you had that dot-com boom sort of era. Everybody was buying everybody else. I suddenly realized there was a way to grow that had never been previously apparent to me. I mean, it was literally, I just never ever thought about the idea of buying a business. And I guess I dismissed it because I didn't have tons of money. I had a really shitty credit rating because I'd gone bust a few years before. And yeah, basically I couldn't borrow money from banks, didn't have the capital to do it. In fact, I had choice, my choice would be whether to pay the staff or the credit card bill at the end of the month, not whether to go and buy this other business. But what I realized, because I was being approached really regularly by other telecoms companies that were trying to buy me, what I realized was they didn't have any money either. So these people sitting on the other side of the table, they talked a good game and they put a good presentation together, and the idea that they were pitching me, because it was a pitch after all, was pretty compelling. But they were in the same position I was. They were just trying to grow their company and add more customers, add more value. So I figured, shit, I need to be on the other side of this desk. And so I went out and started pitching anyone I could find that had a telecoms business about trying to buy them. Now, I had no idea what I was talking about. I was completely out of my depth. I was in my early 20s. And I always describe myself as a late shaver. I never would have been able to produce that wonderful beard you have on your face. I was always a little baby faced kid, and that really hampered me, really held me back. This kind of always looking younger than I was thing. And so anyway, I went around pitching people. Eventually, I found somebody that basically was in a distressed scenario. They felt they had lots of natural buyers for the business, but obviously no one that would be able to complete a deal in the time frame they were looking to do it in, which was a sort of matter of weeks. And I was able to put a deal together, literally kind of invent a deal structure and paste something together that got that deal done and over the line without me committing any capital up front. Now, it wasn't an especially fantastic deal. It was a couple of $100,000 a year of revenue. But what was interesting about it is, A, it broke my deal virginity. It gave me enormous confidence. I actually did my second deal 2 weeks later. So it really was the catalyst for doing lots of deals. And what was really cool about it is I grew by a year's worth of sales in an afternoon, and I hadn't done any sales, any marketing, or done anything with my team, or risked any capital in the transaction. And for me, it was just an epiphany. It was kind of like, peeking behind the curtain and seeing a whole new universe that existed behind there. And that was really, from then on, the foundation of a new kind of life and addiction, frankly.
It's interesting. One of the things that attracted to me to your course, and full disclosure, I've taken your course to for my audience to know, was that creative deal structure. I came from running a real estate investment group, a real estate investment firm that bought foreclosures. I seen the nasty things that banks will do to people. Even a lot of the people, not a lot, I'd say a high percentage, 35+% of the people in foreclosure were in foreclosure at no fault of their own.
Mm,
Insurance premiums changed. They just, the only fault was they probably bought a house at the edge of what they could afford. But this
yeah,
creative structure that you had with no banks involved, I'm bank adverse. I really am. Like, I've seen what they'll do. I've seen
yeah.
what they can do, and some of the shady stuff that happens, in the big banking industry for just the real estate side. So when you're like, when you were advertising, dollar down, no money down type of deals in creative structure, I've been doing that in real estate for a long time. So, your first thought is it really possible?
Mm. Yeah, no, it's a very common disconnect that people have. And look, for me, it was necessity. And what is it they say? Necessity is the mother of invention. I didn't have a choice, and so I had to come up with a structure that worked. Now, obviously, that meant I probably walked away from a dozen deals that could have worked if I'd had the cash. But if you can create a deal that has asymmetric risk, so your downside is 100% protected. You could break even or you could make money. Well, you should take that bet every time. And I guess that's what I tried to create with the deal structures that I was doing. And they got more and more creative as I tried new things and grew a bit older. But absolutely, look, there's leverage buyouts, which is what most people understand a no money down deal to be, which is simply like taking a mortgage on a house. You borrow money to leverage an asset. Now, I don't like leveraging property particularly. I'm 47 years old, so I've been through about three housing crises in my life. And we're now in an era where the Fed is promising to raise interest rates. And historically, when that's happened, it often leads to a housing collapse. And the problem with a housing collapse is it tends to be a spiral, because as soon as the prices go down, it pushes a whole new band of people into negative equity. Those houses get repossessed. That drives the market a bit lower, and those will trigger a whole new rough. And it gets very bloody very quickly. And then a good amount of time passes and everybody forgets about it. And all the investors are new in real estate. And then history repeats itself. What is it they say? The only thing we learn from history is we learn nothing from history. So you get back into the same, shitty death spiral that you had 15, 20 years ago. Well, I guess the last time was probably 2009, but that was a little bit, I think people felt it in Florida and a couple of other places, but a lot of people escaped that one. But that's on the real estate side. Now, real estate, prices move in real estate pretty slowly. It's not a very liquid asset, and prices move pretty slowly. Small business is incredibly volatile. You lose two key customers, two key staff members, the business can change dramatically overnight. Likewise, you could win a customer or take a significant, step forwards or, joint venture or something like that could massively increase the value of the business. But nonetheless, if you're going to leverage, if you're going to borrow money, do you really want to be borrowing money against a highly volatile asset? I think I've said this to people before, with the cryptocurrencies, the meme coins and the NFTs. That might be an NFT behind you. I can't really see, but this kind of thing. Would you mortgage your house and stick it into a meme coin, a Doge coin, or something like that? I mean, I'm sure there's a percentage of the audience that would say yes, but it's fucking daft. So I'm not quite sure.
And that's not
But
an
it's a
NFT. I haven't touched NFTs just for that purpose. I was like, I don't understand it
right.
enough to design it or be part of it. And
Yeah,
studied it a little bit just because I got curious for one of the acquisitions I was looking at. It had a potential NFT play on it. It
yeah.
was a lot of original content inside of there. But other than that, if it doesn't benefit one of the businesses I'm in, I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna keep moving along.
It's a fascinating area. Look, I love NFTs, but I love NFTs for the technology around chain of custody. I think that chain of custody thing enables you to sell smaller ticket assets and items. It enables you to fractionalize assets more easily, whether that be art or physical assets like yachts and planes and things like that. But obviously, at the moment, we're still caught up in the bored ape phase of the technology development. I mean, if you look at the early days of the internet, that was just, porn and gambling. So I guess they need to get whatever the latest generation's equivalent of porn and gambling out of their system, and then the real innovation will come.
Yeah, I honestly think that there's going to be a big shift. I think the NFT, the technology about it, that chain of custody, is going to disrupt, like totally disrupt a lot of industries. I had a company
Mm.
come to me and ask me if I wanted to buy a closing company because I'm, very informed in the real estate space, and I was like, not quite yet. And the reason is, I honestly think the blockchain and NFT is going to totally do away with a lot of the traditional closing of anything that holds a title. So
Yeah,
let- let's jump right
yeah, I
into
agree.
the topic of like buying versus building. Right? We
Mm.
a lot of us entrepreneurs, we think that if we got to create a new idea, we start. Nobody's got it done right. I'm going to do it myself. You know, and you know what's the difference between that mentality and I love one of the phrases you use about the marathon, right? Running the race, but why buy one as opposed to creating an idea and starting from scratch?
Yeah, so look, I think there's different reasons you can buy companies. So the one I just talked about was kind of a bolt-on. It was a way of expanding a business I already had without taking on additional staff members, investing in marketing, trying something new and risky. I could just add more customers to my customer base, and that's one kind of use for acquisitions and a very viable one. What you're talking about is kind of the starting or buying a business instead of starting one, and I think this is also quite valuable because when you do start a business, you tend to find that first 3 years is really pushing the rock up the hill. You're developing the logo, the concept, the brand values, the website, finding employee number one, going out there and selling product yourself to try and get some inertia. And that's pretty thankless. So because when you value a business, you value it, for the shareholder value perspective. You tend to value it on its yield, what it can earn you. When you hear about price earnings ratio, it's a multiple of how much the business generates in income. Well, in that first 3 years, you don't generate a lot of income. You build a lot of foundations. And so, you only have a finite number of those 3 year stretches you can invest in things. And a lot of times, 95% apparently of times, those 3 years end in tears. They don't actually get you anywhere. And so I would much rather buy a business without investing my own capital and without borrowing money from banks that got me through the 3 year phase. I have staff, I have customers, I have revenue, I have profits, I have a website, I have a brand. Now, if you want to change that brand or change that website or tweak the product or add another product to the mix, you can do all of that stuff self-financed from within the business. And you can do it a lot more quickly than developing it all from scratch. So even if you have an idea for a revolutionary poodle clipping parlor, and you can't find a poodle clipping parlor to buy, maybe you could buy another business that perhaps has a similar customer demographic or something related that you could then do that sort of idea within. rather than, doing that absolute from scratch thing. And I think the thing that really solidified this idea in my mind was when I looked at what people spent on restaurants. People spending 500,000 to 2 million on a restaurant refurbishment. And I could literally pick them up. I was offered 10 a week, that had closed down, where I would pick up all the fixtures, all the fittings, and the, kitchen and everything. Pretty much if I took over the lease and paid the rent to the landlord. And so, and this, this happened with alarming regularity, how much money would be invested in that startup, restaurant. And so, I think there's a lot to be said for doing that. Having said that, I don't take away the education you get from a startup. You know what I said about that kind of, dose of humility that you get from having to do something yourself and realize how hard it is. Because if you haven't done a startup, I think you could be sitting there on the sidelines believing it's really easy. And I think you do need that dose of humility. I think it's a rite of passage to go through the process of doing a startup. I just don't get the serial startup guys, the ones that have done 30, 40 startups in their life. Life's too fucking short. Again, we were talking about the spending time with our kids thing. We both have young families. We like to spend time with our kids. And I'm so glad that I took a deal making path in my life, because my kids are 7 and 5, and I've worked from home, lived at home, been with my kids for that entire time. And I meet people who have adult children that barely knew them as children because they were working so hard in their business. So, I'm hugely grateful for the time that you get being a deal maker.
Somebody asked me, why don't you started so many businesses? Why don't you just grab an idea and run with it? And I was like, because I'm 50, and 3 to 5 years to get the rock pushed up the hill, as you refer to it, just doesn't appeal to me anymore. Because those 3 to 5 years, if you're really going after it, if you're really mean to do that, you're going to spend a lot of those weeks at 50, 60, 70, sometimes even 80 hours of the week. My kids are worth
Yeah,
more to me than that business is.
you sacrifice everything in a startup. Your social life, your sometimes friendships, relationships, all sorts of things. Which it's a young man's game. I agree. It's and also, when you're young, you can take those kind of gambles as well. It's you're happy to stick everything on red or black or whatever it is and spin the wheel. When you've gone through the motions, you've made some money, you've had a career. It's time to stop sticking everything on red and spinning the wheel. It's time to have a slightly more planned existence, not a robbing Peter, not quite paying Paul, crazy existence.
It's interesting, as one of my friends loved, yeah, but then you have if you build it yourself, you have that story that I built this. I was like, yeah, I kind of given up the ego behind that. I'd rather say I own this than I built this, right?
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
we're out there. I've got a lot of listeners here. They're out there. They're looking for deals and stuff. Talk a little bit about, what does it look like? Is this something you can do on your own? Do you build, typically, like, have a set of resources, build a team around, like a deal acquisitions team? What is your recommendation in that space?
Yeah, so look, it's quite common. It's quite common for people to build a deal team, a lawyer, accountant, that kind of stuff, all around them. I actually tend to recommend against it. So what I tend to find is that when you surround yourself with advisors, they feel like they have to be adding something to the conversation, and so consequently you end up with this kind of decisions made by a committee, sort of thing. And also you start to second guess your own judgments and start to rely on other people's opinions. And at some point, I think you've got to, just make some decisions and stick by them and do things. And also, I think for actually getting a deal done, if you can do it mano a mano with the business owner. So if you can sit down, when you're buying a small to medium sized business, it's often owner managed. So it's a very different transaction to a corporate transaction. When, this massive multinational brewing company buys another multinational brewing company, well, the shareholders are not the owner, are not the directors, and the directors employ all these advisors, and the advisors sit in a room and hammer out the deal together, and then the directors present it to the shareholders, and if they vote in favor, then the deal goes ahead. That's a completely different dynamic. When it's a owner managed business, it's about creating a relationship and rapport with that business owner, solving a problem for them, figuring out where they are now and where they want to be, and is there a way that you can help them get there, which ends up with you getting what you want too. And that's pretty much in a nutshell what doing deals with business owners is about. And that could well be that they're transitioning into their retirement. It could well be they're transitioning into another business. It could well be they're getting rid of a hot potato, something that's keeping them awake at night that they don't really want in their hands anymore. There's a whole bunch of reasons, and if you can help them get from where they are to that new place, then often there's a deal to be done.
So we're reaching out to business owners who have a need. We're solving the need, and that's how we facilitate, getting a low down, no down type of deal. A lot
Hmm.
of people don't understand that, it's not zero down. That the owner's not like handing you the business for $1 per se. It's no money right this second, or it's a lot of times it's deferred, or it's out of the, one of the ones I just seen. Um, they acquired the business and promised the owner a certain down payment within the first 90 days, and then they liquidated a bunch of over excess inventory, and most of the money came out of the cash that was in the business, and that inventory they were able to sell off to give the owner what he wanted down. That's right. So it's
Hmm.
still $1 out of the buyers, out of that guy's pocket, the acquisition entrepreneur's pocket, but the owner still got money. How often is
Absolutely,
that
yeah.
the
No,
case when you do deals?
yeah, no money down doesn't mean no money. Yeah, so I think that's an important differentiation, and yeah, it's just how it's structured, and it's structured in a way that creates that asymmetric risk. And I think the other thing to be cognizant of is that this is a buyer's market. There are a lot of businesses out there that need to transition and change hands, and there aren't a lot of natural buyers for them. These businesses are way too small for a institutional or competitor to buy them. They simply can't afford to do the due diligence to carry out a transaction. And the ones that are on the market really aren't geared up to sell. Their accounts aren't kept in a way that is suitable for a potential buyer. They're often, designed to mitigate tax rather than present profits. They've got lots of personal expenses running through them, that sort of thing. They don't have their data room up together. They wouldn't pass the kind of traditional scrutiny that a buyer is going to want to go through in order to think about acquiring that company. And so really, they don't have a ton of other options. And so when you can present them with a really good solution to transition out of the business that ends up with them getting a fair price for it as well, it really is a win-win for everybody.
I was talking to a couple people here on the show that do private equity, and they were saying that the private equity starts looking at companies that the profit we refer to as Ebitda or solid discretionary earnings. They're actually kind of focusing on that that Ebitda or a profit out of 1.5 million and above. Well, you at a really good profit margin, if you got an excellent profit margin of a company, say 20%, that's a $7.5 million company. So a lot of people, when you say small to medium, for a lot of acquisition entrepreneurs, a company generating 1.4, 1.3, you're under the radar of those
Mm.
institutional site buyers is still a life changing deal that can happen. That market. What I'm trying to get to, I guess, is that market of um, business owners where the private equity and the corporate buyers are not really diving into is a lot bigger than most people would expect.
It's most of the economy. Yeah, it's, it's a really really low. I mean, it's a pyramid, isn't it? With kind of Apple and Amazon at the top, and the further down you go in terms of scale, the wider it becomes. And so there's a bottoming out level. I wouldn't buy a business doing less than 500,000 a year because it's pretty much a job for someone. It's not really a business. But there's a sweet spot in the kind of 1 to 5 million sort of space where the company is, delineated its roles and tasks within it. So it's separated sales from accounting, for example, and it's got all of that stuff mixed up, and there's not a lot of natural buyers for them. So you're the only game in town, pretty much.
I was looking at industry statistics. They're saying right now a little over 1,600 deals or companies close per day in the United States because they don't have a transition plan. There's nobody to other buy them. So
Yeah,
I'm just trying to give it. If you're listening, the scope or
yeah.
the
I
scale of
I
which, and it's
stumble across. I
And it's
stumble across people all the time. There was a company here that was doing 12.5 million a year in revenue selling solar generators, solar panels and solar generators. And he basically was leaving the country, so he decided to close it. He literally just locked the doors, turned off the website, and disappeared. And it literally just does not cross people's mind that there would be somebody that would buy that business. And yeah, you'd be astonished how many people go, right, well, I'm done now. I'm retiring. So I'll start running the business down over the next 12 months and then I'll close the doors and walk away. And they never dreamed that their business could actually be sold.
So let's cover just something that's unique about you amongst the other mentors that I've talked to and stuff. I think Carl travels a little bit, but you're all over the world. When you say here, where do you happen to be right now? Because I've been on the phone with you on Clubhouse, and you're in Dubai, or just that doesn't look like
Yeah, so I mean,
that doesn't look like your yacht. It looks because you have art
no,
behind you. So I assumed you're actually
there's some yachts out there. So
it's down there. So are you in Dubai? Where are
yeah,
you
yeah.
at now?
I'm in the Dubai Marina right now. So yeah, so
Awesome.
yeah, so we're Singapore permanent residents. We have the house here in Dubai. We also spend the summers in Europe. We have a couple of places in Europe we go regularly. So yeah, we travel around a lot. Funnily enough, I don't travel that much for business. So next weekend I'm in Zanzibar, which I've never been to before, in Tanzania, which should be good fun taking the kids there because it's the Easter holidays from school. And then I actually have a business trip, and I don't do too many of those. So yeah, have a couple of meetings I'm flying to, one in London, one in the north of England, and then back to Dubai. But yeah, we travel a lot as a family. We're global citizens. We like to be in multiple places.
So you're actively doing deals. I mean, you're like in the weeds doing the deals, and then you step
Mm.
outside of that occasionally to do mentoring and teach a course. I know you're coming to the United States in May or June, I think.
Mhm.
So
Well, this is the thing. You'd know that better than me. I actually don't know when I'm there, so it's. I have a team so we have a Harbour Club community. So when I started the Harbour Club, which is the kind of the mentoring teaching side of things, I started it because I was being pestered all the time by people to come and work for them. So it was like, come and work for us and show us how you do what you do. You know, come and be a non-exec director or come and be a consultant, help us buy a company. We want to buy a company, this kind of stuff. So I kept saying no to all these people, but when you say no to so many people, you think there's got to be kind of a product or a service or something in that. You can't get rid of the entrepreneur in you. And then I bought a seminar business, and the seminar business was selling these seminars on marketing, on Facebook advertising, on all these kind of things. This was back in like 2008, and so I thought, that's the solution. I can have a community for and a course for buying and selling businesses. But I thought I wanted to be the anti-course because most of the people that sell courses, what is it? The old those who can do, those who can't teach adage, and most of them are really just marketing gurus, and they have this funnel. So they sell you a little product, and then they sell you a bigger one, and then they sell you a bigger one, and it's kind of a relentless upsell. And I remember when I was a kid and I used to go to seminars, this would drive me crazy because it would be like $59 and you're going to learn this and this and this over this 3 day course. And you're like, fuck, $59 for 3 days. That's amazing. And then you get there. The first day is just shit about how great the second day is going to be. The second day is, warming you up for the close. And the third day is just a pitch, like a whole day pitch for a 10, 20, 30 grand product that you have to buy to get all the stuff you thought you were going to get for the $59. Now, when you're an entrepreneur, 3 days out of your life is a lifetime. I mean, the shit that you could have got done if you weren't sitting there listening to this arrogant bastard pitch you all day, you could have really made some progress. So I swore to myself I would never do that kind of thing. And so we actually have an anti-course. There's no upsells. There's nothing you can buy from us apart from a membership. And it is a real community, lots of people in the community. And there's an app where everybody collaborates. We have face-to-face meetups and stuff. But what's been really good, I started it back in 2009. I had no idea it would be successful. I thought it would just be a way of getting rid of these people that asked me to, work for them. And actually, it started off with like 4 or 5 people in every group. Now, the one we're doing in London in April, I think it's 250 people. Now those are their existing members meeting up. This is not something we've sold them. This is a kind of group event. But yeah, it's cool. It's got a real life of its own, and the product innovation that comes out of it, because everyone's sharing their ideas and coming up with new things. It constantly evolves and challenges my own ideas and everybody's ideas around different ways of doing deals. So it's been absolutely fantastic for my own development in this industry and getting stuff done. But I've been really lucky that the team I have around me in the Harbour Club pretty much take care of everything. In fact, I was asking, so the live event with 250 people is in about 14 days or 15 days from now. And I haven't actually seen an agenda for it yet. I'm obviously going to be standing on a stage for 3 days. But I haven't seen the agenda of what's exactly what's going on. And all of that's been prepared in the background without my involvement completely from, all the guest speakers from the Harbour Club community who are sharing their case studies and all of that sort of stuff. And literally everything is taken care of without me, which is kind of lucky because I'm buried up to my eyeballs in deals at the moment. So we use this, Mondays, the project management software. So my whole team uses Mondays for tracking all the deals. But I use giant post-it notes all over my wall. Well, it's a glass partition. And each one of those is a deal in various stages of progress. And so, yeah, we're really kind of buried in it. It's a very busy time. We're really buried at the moment, and so it's great that I can just turn up and speak when it comes to the Harbour Club. So, and I turn up and speak about the last thing we did, or the deal we're working on at the moment, or the one that we closed last week, and then it's super authentic. It's not like some big pre-planned presentation about a deal from 15 years ago. It's something very contemporary.
That's awesome. One thing I will say, and as a kudos to you, a compliment, the the uh, the club, or you call it what's the word I'm looking for?
The
The environment, the
community,
people. Yeah, the
yeah.
people inside of Harbor Club are worth twice the price of admission, right?
Mm.
I really, I've been through a lot of courses. I used to joke around. I have a bookcase. It's taken down. All right, I turned my camera to show you this. I have a bookcase of the real estate course that I took. That at one point I did the math, and it was like $140,000 worth of courses on this daggone bookshelf. You know,
Yeah. Shelf development.
yeah, is it because you show up to one of these? Like if I go to this course, I'll learn something and move my business forward. They pitch you three more ideas, and you got the money. So you're like, if I pull one idea out of that $3,000 course, it's gonna help my business. I had courses I still had cellophane on. So when I decided to switch gears from real estate to buying and selling business as opposed to houses, I made the promise to friends and families, like, I'm not going to go to a dozen courses. I'm going to pick one and I'm going to go do a deal or two. And then if I do it, when I get deals done, if I want to take something else, I'll go learn from somebody else. Right.
Mm.
But that has to pay for itself because I don't want cellophane wrapped, plastic wrapped courses up there that I'm never going to crack the case on. Um, the community you have, that's the word I was looking for earlier. The community inside a Harbor Club truly is that. It is a community. You can post questions there. People can answer those questions. I know a few of the other guys out there have something similar, but I have not. I've been especially in the real estate side, I've been through all the programs. I haven't seen a community built like this. So I
Mm.
appreciate
Well,
that.
I think a lot of the other people, because they come from the digital marketing space, they tend to target the kind of get rich quick crowd. So it's not so much a community as kind of the blind leading the blind. Whereas all of our marketing is deliberately targeted at entrepreneurs and business owners and interesting people. And so we don't tap into any kind of joint ventures with personal development companies or by any of those kind of get rich quick databases, quite deliberately, because the quality of the community is really important. Ultimately I end up doing deals in the community, so I don't want loads of people in there that are just taking up space because they paid us some money. I'd much rather have people that are actively out there finding deals, and when they find one that they think might be a cool joint venture with me, they'll bring it to me. They're not obliged to, but that does seem to work pretty well.
That's awesome. You know, let's talk a little bit about the availability of deals across the world because you are uniquely positioned to have seen it, right? You've been to the U.S., you've been, you know, pretty much everywhere. I think
In the last
yeah,
12 months,
have
in the last
skills will
12 months,
travel, right? So,
in the last 12 months, we've done Australia, New Zealand, Singapore, the UK, France, US, and Canada transactions in all of those countries in the last 12 months. Yeah, so
So if you're listening to this and you think,
You'll notice they're mainly English speaking, so we're a bit lazy in that respect. Apart from France, obviously.
so if you're listening to this, you think, yeah, that works over there because he lives in Dubai and that's where all the wealthy people are, or you know, I'm not in California where all the businesses are. I'm sitting in Tulsa. Now I'm moving to California in a few weeks, or I'm moving to wine country for family reasons. But I'm sitting in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And I've talked to businesses in Dubai. I've talked to businesses, all over the world. The market has changed. How has COVID affected you? Because for us, it actually helped us. People are way more comfortable doing
Yeah,
deals via Zoom than ever before.
that that was one big transformative thing. What was really funny? So we got our Zoom account in 2016, and actually at that time we took a vote in our office because I've got like 17 people in an office in Singapore, or not in an office anymore. But in 2016 we actually had a vote on would you prefer to work from home or carry on coming to the office, and it was overwhelmingly work from home. And so we actually switched our entire business model to working from home from 2016. We also got rid of holiday time. So there's no vacation time. If you want to go on vacation, just go. You just have to make sure all the work is done. So we have complete flexible working with the entire team. And so actually, when COVID arrived, we were pretty well set up for it straight away. And like you say, doing deals over Zoom really, really improved. Although one thing I would say is that doing deals over Zoom in Europe and Australasia and Asia was fairly easy. I would actually say in the US it was a little bit harder. So in the US, we noticed during the really harsh lockdown period, like 2020 time, complete drop off of transactions in the US. We were having plenty of calls, we were having plenty of conversations, but nothing was really closing. But we were closing deals like crazy in Europe. And they had exactly the same lockdowns and restrictions and all of that stuff. So I think it does vary a little bit from one geography to another. Some people like that face to face touch. Some of them are happy to do the entire transaction virtually. The other interesting thing was just it brought all the people that might possibly want to sell to the front of the queue of definitely wanting to sell now. So they got off the fence pretty quickly, and so there's a big influx of potential opportunities. And what was interesting is they weren't just the COVID affected businesses. So you had people wanting to sell who had businesses that were, bucking the trend. We bought a caravan and motorhome business. You call them RVs, but that's obviously booming because there's no cruise ships or foreign holidays and stuff like that. So, but that was a retirement sale where the retirement was possibly accelerated by COVID. And then you have all the bounce back kind of opportunities. So you have the restaurants, the spas, the gyms, the health clubs, the hairdressers, all of those kind of businesses that were, decimated by COVID, but great businesses to bounce back once things kind of return to normality. And so there was kind of two streams of opportunity. There was the buy them when they're down because they're going to bounce back, or buy them because they're a really good bet in this new world that we find ourselves in. So yeah, they kind of fall broadly into those two categories, but there's more of both.
We put together a small team, and I don't want to go too far into it, but we, in a matter of 200, and I think 200, less than 220 days, spoke to nearly 200 marketing agencies, and all via Zoom. A lot of them in the United States. And the funny thing that the United States, at the beginning of that conversation, we were right in the middle of the COVID time. At the beginning of it, you could tell that the owners were a little disappointed we weren't going to fly out because here in the United States, they're used to a team or one or two people flying them out, taking them to the finest restaurant in town, buying them the finest bottle of wine and wining and dining. And are like, yeah, we're not doing that. We've got this opportunity for you. We're not flying anywhere. And if you're interested, let's talk. And it's the conversation still move forward. So I think there is a little bit of that here in the United States is, business owners that are especially in spaces that are courted commonly, marketing agencies, software companies, people that, people are trying to buy them often. Some of them play the game. They just like to go out to the fine restaurants and dinners and hear what you have to say. So to some respect, we would have never accomplished talking to that many businesses if we had to fly somewhere, travel and everything. And we would have spent a shit ton of money, excuse my French. We'd have spent a lot of money flying, dining, and just trying to have conversations just to find out they weren't really interested to start with. So
just generally ruining your marriage.
It's interesting is, the dating of business owners is a lot easier when you can just Zoom them and, like, get a judge of,
Exactly.
what their motivations are and what they're trying to do that. Let's talk about that. The first call or the first, like, presentation you have with a business owner, what do you see as the most important thing to do on that call?
Build rapport. So create a relationship with the other party, and I think people get so, I see this a lot in the community with new starters. They get really hung up on that first deal or their first meeting, and I think they feel like this first meeting has to be a deal. They have to close it. They have to come out, with something. And I always just try and calm people back down and say, look, treat this as like the research phase. You're going to go and speak to a bunch of entrepreneurs that all own the types of businesses that you'd like to end up owning in the future, and you're doing that in order to find out what the common issues are, challenges are in the industry, areas where there might be opportunity to collaborate. And I said, and really just think of it that you didn't have a deal when you went into that meeting. So what's the worst that can happen? You leave the meeting either having learned something or with a deal you never had before. So there really is no lose from that meeting. And if you can relax and approach the meeting from just having a chat with another human being about life, the universe, and everything, you'll actually get a lot further than you will being this kind of hungry Rottweiler, trying to get information out of them and trying to get a deal done. Because nobody wants a hungry Rottweiler humping their leg, do they? you want you want to just have a decent chat. And I think people really, really underestimate that. And particularly, I see a lot of the kind of MBA students who, they go nuts with the fancy dress department. So they've got their Hermes belt and their three-piece suit and they've got their 200 grand watch on and everything. And they go, they go in there and they try and be as professional as possible by being as boring as fuck and asking questions about accounts for 2 hours. And of course, that's not going to get them into the affections of a seasoned 30-year entrepreneurial veteran who, who likes, who's got there through their own kind of sweat and graft. And so, yeah, build rapport, build empathy is the number one outcome for that first meeting.
So it says on your LinkedIn profile, you did this. You acquired your first business in the '90s. So you've been doing this for 20 plus years now. What are some of the things you know now that you wish you'd have known on day one?
Oh my God. Well, I guess one of the obvious ones is big deals take exactly the same time and energy as small ones. So you can piss around doing a deal with, for 500 grand of revenue or one that's doing 50 million of revenue, and it's broadly the same amount of work and effort. And so, yeah, think bigger, I guess would be one thing. But then again, I wouldn't take away that rite of passage. I possibly wouldn't be able to do those bigger deals if I hadn't got some smaller ones under my belt initially to give me the expertise and confidence. I mean, look, this is just a massive learning curve. I often joke to people that I know 10% about M&A, but that's 9% more than anybody else. So it really is. It's such a vast topic. And particularly, I mean, we keep evolving what we're doing, so we created a new product called an extra bond, which is effectively a currency you can use to acquire companies. It's kind of like printing your own money and then acquiring businesses with them, with that money. And we invented that strategy. We've done about 15 deals now using extra bonds in the last sort of year. And it's a game changer, and we're about to use it in a few other companies and kind of roll it out. But that's a baptism of fire. Like, how do you list a bond? What is a bond? How do you structure a bond? What needs to go into the prospectus of the bond? How can you have a bond that's not for raising capital, but to be used as a currency? What are the legal ramifications of that? And basically, had to research all of that stuff, ourselves and figure it out and go and do that. And that's really like, I guess a fairly typical kind of, thing for me. I spend a lot of time, reading stuff on the internet. I was reading a whole bunch of stuff about interim reports today. We're listing a company on a junior stock market on another exchange. And they were challenging me about interim reports being audited. And I said, I'm pretty sure interim reports of public companies aren't actually audited. It's only the annual report that's audited. The interim reports are normally, qualified. Maybe an auditor says, yes, these are the company's management numbers, but management numbers by definition aren't audited. And so, I'm off researching to be able to tell a regulator in a country what they should know about something. And I find myself doing that a lot, researching stuff so I can tell lawyers what they should be telling me. But I think you need to, I think you need to do that. I think you need to, constantly be educating yourself, not just relying on advisors to go and find things for you and pay them for their advice, but actually go and, if this is the takeover panel in the UK, for example, which governs the acquisition of companies by public companies in the UK. Well, the takeover panel has a website and it has its rule book, and it's not a big rule book; it's 70 pages. So go read it. And honestly, if you've read it, you're probably more up to speed than your lawyer is because they read it 15 years ago when they qualified, and may be aware of some of the amendments, but probably aren't. It probably isn't as current in their mind as it is in yours when you've just finished reading it. So go and do the research, go and do the legwork, learn about everything voraciously, and you'll be amazed how much stuff you can pick up.
So what I picked up out of that right there was you don't have to give up your creative side and your building stuff side to be an acquisition entrepreneur. You can acquire
No.
companies and use your creative side and your building side on building new strategies for acquiring, building new strategies for funding, building new strategies for exiting, right?
Absolutely. It's creative deal structures. Yeah. I mean, acquiring companies is kind of problem solving. We all get a buzz when we solve a problem, don't we? And it's that dopamine hit, I guess, that I'm addicted to.
It's funny as I always call myself a problem solver, but I try to quit a little bit there because what is a problem? What is everybody that you know bring a problem solver, right?
They're going to bring you the problems.
They bring you
Yeah.
problems, right? So if you identify yourself as a guy who's really good at solving problems, to this day, I still get 3 calls a week at least with the real estate problems, title problems, issues, and I help those people because they're friends. But
Yeah. Well, you should say to them,
labeling,
look, you should say the problem I have right now is the money that I want is in your pocket. They'll leave you alone.
I have a friend who's going through law school. He says, you know what? Send everybody an invoice and then put the friends and family discount at the bottom to zero it out. But at least then they can see what you would have charged anybody else to do that, and they'll
Yeah.
respect your time a little bit more. I've got it dialed down. I would say 2 years ago, before that lawyer friend and performance coach friend of mine, he's also a performance coach, got on to me over it. I would spend 10, 15 hours a week on the phone helping people solve problems for nothing, right? That doesn't work.
Mm.
Um, so inside of this space, you're reaching out to business owners, you're figuring out what their pain points are. I've learned through those 200 plus conversations I've already had, and through talking to all these people on the podcast, most of the buyers don't necessarily take. I would say 80% of the people, and when I asked them, they didn't take the highest and best offer
Mm.
on their
No,
business.
absolutely. Absolutely. And the number of times I've seen this where somebody has a very well crafted offer with cash on the table, and they will end up going with the no cash option because they see it as a safer pair of hands, a more reliable buyer, a more empathetic buyer, perhaps somebody that's going to take care of their staff or maintain the company's name or the company's building or something like this. Legacy is always, so legacy is a really interesting motivation because most of the other things people will bring up with you as, straight off the bat as something that they're looking to do. Like, I really want to make sure the staff are looked after is something that they'll just come up with. But saying I'd like my name on the front of this building for the next 30 years is a bit hard. You sound like a fucking egomaniac if you say that.
But you know they want it.
But they want it, yeah. So legacy is one of those things where if you suggest it, you'll very quickly gauge from their physiology whether you've just hit the hot button or whether it doesn't really bother them at all. And if you have hit that hot button, then go full steam into legacy. And what you're gonna, I'm gonna set up the fucking Dave Smith Foundation for battered children or something. Go
It's
all in on legacy.
I honestly would have never expected that legacy and taking care of their team would overrule money way more often than it would not, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
oftentimes they're done with the money creation bit. They did that years ago. They've got the holiday home, they've got the new car. When you're going into retirement, you already have your pension kind of taken care of. Um, an extra few hundred grand here or there, you know, probably isn't the most important thing in your life. Not being hated and having to look over your shoulder in a small town for the rest of your life, that's a whole different, kettle of fish.
So one of the questions I had for you is because I've come across this a couple times when I was talking to somebody wanting to retire. It's the what do they do next? How do you inside of that rapport building thing? I've seen deals like crash at the last second because the owner doesn't know what he's going to do with this time when he sells. I have a soap company here in town I'd love to get my hands on, but the owner's 70 plus and he thinks all of his friends sold their business or shut it down and retired and then died within weeks. He thinks when he sells this thing, he's dying, right? Like he actually said on the
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
call,
yeah.
"I'm not ready to die yet." So,
Yeah, it is a common one. I think it's Warren Buffett. You know, he bought that company from a woman who was 93, and she retired when she was 104 or 105, and then she died straight away. And he says, and that just demonstrates the perils of early retirement. But yeah, I mean, look, one thing is to keep them around. So there's a kind of a non-job called the chairman emeritus. So chairman emeritus is the kind of person who started the business, and it gives them a role in the business as sort of an ambassador for the company. It can be unpaid or it can be low paid, but it keeps their involvement. You know, you say to them, look, obviously a lot of the business was built on your reputation and your stuff. So we want to, wheel you out for the Christmas parties and bring you in perhaps for the odd key client once or twice a year. And we'll keep you as chairman emeritus, which is not the chairman, not the CEO, nothing to do with management, can't tell you to do anything, but, they still have a business card. Yeah, maybe on the website and things like that. And it can be helpful. And actually for transitioning, it's a positive thing. If they want to stick around and do that role, it means that they're not selling it because they think it's going to fall off a cliff tomorrow. That's encouraging if you can keep them around on that sort of basis.
cool. We are actually getting close to the top of the hour. So, one of the
Mm.
things I like to always ask is like, what are your big three, two or three takeaways as far as like if you're going to get into this space, you probably should do these three things or know these three things.
Yeah, look, start the process of educating yourself on the topic. So, there's lots of, I publish tons of stuff on YouTube. There's tons of stuff on social media. We give away a lot of free content because we want people to join the community who are pretty sure this is the path that they want to take. We even do a whole 21-day free email course you can probably dig out if you follow me on social media. We probably post, I actually don't know, but we probably post links to it. And that's really to try and educate the audience a lot without them having to part with any money or do anything else so that they understand this is a path they want to take. Because look, it is pretty polarizing as an idea. You either love it or you hate it. So we'd much rather help people as far as possible to decide whether or not that's something they want to do. So that would definitely be my number one, takeaway, is to start that process of kind of educating yourself. And if you've decided it is something that you want to do, then you can even start the process of outreach to company owners. So start speaking to business owners in the sort of industries that you're looking at. Don't bother going to business brokers or businesses for sale or anything like that. But yeah, start that sort of outreach to have conversations with them. You'll be amazed sometimes, when you speak to three of them, that you might find tie-ups between those three. Like one of them wants to retire and one of them's young and hungry. Well, maybe those two companies belong together, and you might actually find some natural synergies between the conversations that you end up having. And I'd probably say they're the kind of two key foundation things. I wouldn't even go as far as saying number three.
Awesome. And I really resonate with that. Talking to the business owners, one of the things you said during the course, and I don't know if you say it at everyone, but it just really stuck with me is don't buy yourself another job. So,
Mm.
like identifying those two that work together is often a way to do that. If you see a company really needs some inside help, um, buying a second one that's really well run that may be smaller or whatever, they're just better managed would be a great way to give them that help. So
Yeah, a small distressed company can be a real handful, but you can inject that small distressed company into a big profitable one in exchange for a stake, and and have a stake in something big and healthy.
Awesome. Well, is there any parting shots you want to throw out there to the audience? Let's make sure they know how to get a hold of you for one. So,
Yeah, so social media, I guess. So I think my LinkedIn is there on the screen, but yeah, Jeremy Harbour. It's spelled in the British way, Harbour. But you can find me on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. There's jeremyharbour.com as well if you want to go there. That's got links to pretty much everything.
I'll put all those links in the show notes for you guys who are listening on the podcast. You just take a look at the show notes; they'll be there, and then on YouTube and everything else, it'd be in the show description. So I'll have links to how to reach out to him, and I'll have my team put together all your social media links so they can reach out to you. I appreciate having you on the show today. Really appreciate everything you give to the community, and thank you for being here.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, I hope if we inspired one person out there to go out and do a deal, that would be great.
That would be awesome. Hang out a second there after we get done here, and we'll make that the show. Thank you guys for being on the show today.
Awesome. Thank you.
The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind. The Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind combines the traditional peer-to-peer mastermind introduced first in Napoleon Hill's famous book, Think and Grow Rich, with accountability partnering, where your peers help you ensure that you set goals, take actions, and get results. If you want to scale, blow past roadblocks, and achieve success faster than you might think is possible, I suggest you take a visit over to tiepm.com. That's tiepm.com and check out the Investors and Entrepreneurs Professional Mastermind.